Rec-
Hey guys, I wanted to chat with you just really quickly about how to do a proper elimination diet. So, this is basically if you know that you're eating foods and you're like, I think that cauliflower upsets my stomach, or maybe I think after I eat bread, I get a headache, like whatever symptom it might be. Maybe it's bloating, maybe it's gas, maybe it's constipation. It could be a lot of different things. But if you're trying to kind of figure that out, there actually is a proper way to do a food elimination plan or diet. I don't really like to use that word, but you get where I'm going with this. So, this is actually a little bit more detailed if you do a food sensitivity test, because when we do a food sensitivity test, we can actually see what type of sensitivity you have. Is it low, moderate, or high? And then we eliminate foods based on how sensitive you are to them. The length of time varies based on, how sensitive you are. But if you haven't done a food sensitivity and you still know that there are certain foods that bother you, then this is the way to do it. First of all, you want to set yourself up for success. So you want to make some meals in advance. Like, let's say you think that you are maybe have some type of sensitivity to bread, but you eat bread all the time. Well, you have to plan meals where you're either eating a different type of bread, like say gluten-free bread, or you're not having bread at a meal. Otherwise, you're going to reach for what you know. So planning in advance is tip number one. Number two, you want to eliminate the foods that you think are causing you an issue for about 4 to 6 weeks. It needs to be that length of time, and they need to be completely eliminated so that when we reintroduce, you'll be able to tell, if you do have symptoms from those particular foods. And you never want to reintroduce more than one food at a time. Otherwise, of course, it gets a little bit confusing. So after you've eliminated for 4 to 6 weeks, now you could eliminate multiple foods, say 3 or 4 or 5 foods. And then after the 4 to 6 weeks, you'll add one food or food group in at a time. So one at a time, and you want to allow at least 3 days to assess for symptoms. Because the thing with food sensitivities is you can have symptoms up to 3 days later from a food that you ate, again, 3 days prior. So you want to make sure that you give it at least 3 days before you introduce a new food. And then you want to make sure that you are building meals around the foods that you tolerate well. But most importantly, the most important thing is if you do have a lot of food sensitivities or intolerances, you need to get to the root of the problem, because it's actually not an issue with the food. It's typically that you have an underlying gut issue. Maybe you have leaky gut. Maybe you have dysbiosis. Maybe you have some pathogens. That you need to really get to the bottom of that in order to fully heal, or else you're going to have other symptoms and issues, if you don't already, as time goes on. It won't just be the food intolerances or sensitivities. The most common sensitivities that I see on testing when I do have someone that tests is gluten, grains, dairy, eggs. Those are probably the most common ones that I see, and those would be good to begin to eliminate if you're trying to kind of figure things out, and if you are experiencing some symptoms but aren't really sure what's causing it. So I hope that this was helpful. That's just a simple way to, and kind of stepwise process to trying to eliminate those foods that you think may be bothering you. So number one, set yourself up for success. Plan out your meals. Number two, eliminate those foods or groups of foods that you think are bothering you for a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks. Number three, add one food group back in at a time. And you want to assess for symptoms for 3 days. So only one food, no more than every 3 days. And then again, make sure you're building meals around the foods that you can tolerate. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and you guys have a great rest of the day.